Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV. I am Dame Lillian Walker, your host. And so let's dive in deep with part 2 of chapter 7. So it is from within this heart center that we change our mind and energy from living in selfish states to living in selfless states. And then we feel less affected by separation or duality and are more prone to make choices for the greatest good of everyone. So all of us have felt consciousness of the heart center at one time or another in our lives. This energy is related to being fulfilled and at peace with yourself and your surroundings. So when you embrace, or when we embrace the feelings that are related to the heart, feelings that lead us to give, to nurture, to serve, to care, to help, to forgive, to love, to trust, and so on, we can't help but feel filled up, whole, and complete. I believe this to be our innate nature as human beings. Homeostasis, coherence, and resilience. So as you have now learned, the autonomic nervous system, the involuntary division of the nervous system, is divided into 2 subsystems: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And as you know, the sympathetic nervous system, when switched on, it regulates the body's unconscious actions, responses such as increased breathing, elevated heart rate, excess perspiration, dilation of pupils, and so on and so forth. So its primary function is to stimulate the fight or flight response when real or perceived danger is imminent. So this system works to protect us in our outer environment. The parasympathetic nervous system complements the sympathetic nervous system in that it performs the exact opposite functions. Its role is to conserve energy, relax the body, and slow the high energy functions of the sympathetic system. So the parasympathetic system maintains protection in our inner environment, would be the accelerator. So both branches of the autonomic nervous system continuously relay communications between the heart and the brain. So in fact, the heart and the brain have more nerve connections to each other than any other systems in the body. So these 2 systems, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, are always working to maintain a state of homeostasis, relative equilibrium between all systems within the body. So when the body is in the state of homeostasis, we generally feel relaxed and safe within our current environment. And from this state of homeostasis, where all the body's systems are working in harmony and minimal amount of energy are wasted, we can intentionally affect the nervous system to create coherence. So in order to feel these emotions of coherence, the neural connections between the heart and the brain must be functioning optimally in a balanced and a coordinated manner. So when the heart is beating in such an orderly, coherent fashion, it brings the ANS into coherence, which in turn improves our brain functions by causing us to feel more creative, focused, rational, aware, and open to learning. So as you know, the opposite of coherence is incoherence. So when the heart is beating incoherently, we feel out of balance and on edge, anxious and unfocused. Because the body is operating in survival, we function more from an animalistic, primitive perspective by stress, which is the body and mind's response to disruptions and upsets in our external environment. So if the parasympathetic nervous system functions best when we feel safe, then the sympathetic nervous system is activated mostly when we feel unsafe. The stress we experience when we feel unsafe is not necessarily about the event itself, but the results of unmanaged emotional reactions to the event. So in a state of homeostasis, you can think of the body as a sophisticated, finely tuned machine, but when emotions such as resentment and anger, jealousy, impatience, and frustration persist, our internal equilibrium is thrown out of balance. So if you think about a time recently when you felt stress, it probably felt somewhat like a fragmented rhythm. As it turns out, this is exactly what the heart is doing, beating in a fragmented rhythm. In a state of chronic stress, the body struggles to maintain homeostasis, and we begin to suffer from a myriad of stress-related symptoms. This constant stress draws from the invisible energy field around our body and depletes our vital life force, leaving little time and energy for repair and restoration. So as a result of the body's reliance on the stress hormones, now we're caught in an addictive loop where incoherence and chaos start to feel normal. But at what cost? The long-term effects of stress can be catastrophic. According to one Mayo study of people with heart disease, the Mayo Clinic study says that psychological stress was the strongest predictor of future cardiac events, including cardiac death, cardiac arrest, and heart attack. And many people, because they live in states of chronic stress, don't even realize that they are living under stress until an event such as a heart attack occurs. It makes sense then that if the heart is beating incoherently for extended periods of time, not working in balance and in order, sooner or later it is going to fail. So key to our ability to manage stress is what's known as resilience. HMI, the Heart Math Institute, defines as the capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, adversity, trauma, or challenge. Resilience and the management of emotions are both integral to many important physiological processes involved in energy regulation, how fast the body bounces back after the stress response, and our ability to maintain health and homeostasis. HRV, communication between heart and brain. So we've been led to believe that the brain reigns over our biology. While this is partly true, the heart is an autorhythmic organ, which means the heartbeat is self-initiated from within the heart, not from the brain. So for example, it is a known fact that in all kinds of species, the heart can be removed from the body and placed in a salt solution called Ringer solution, where it will continue to beat for extended periods of time, independent of any neurological connection to the brain. In a fetus, the heart begins beating before the brain is even formed at about 3 weeks, while the electrical activity of its brain doesn't even begin until around the 5th or 6th week. This demonstrates that the heart is capable of initiating communication with the central nervous system. And another factor that makes the heart unique is that it contains nerves from both branches of the autonomic nervous system, which means any and every change in both the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system affects the way the heart works on a beat-to-beat basis. So this is important because whether we're conscious or not, every emotion we experience influences our heart rhythm, which gets communicated directly through the central nervous system. So in this way, the heart, the limbic brain, and the ANS have a very intimate relationship because balance or imbalance in one affects the other. So as a side note, the limbic brain, the seat of the autonomic nervous system, is also called the emotional brain. So when you change your emotions, you affect your autonomic functions. And today, with about 75% accuracy, science can predict what someone is feeling just by looking at the beat-to-beat activity of the heart using a heart rate variability analysis, also known as HRV. So the heart rate variability is a physiological phenomena that measures environmental and psychological challenges as reflected by the variation of the heart's beat-to-beat intervals, thus the term variability. Among its uses, HRV can measure the flexibility of our heart and nervous system, which reflects our health and our fitness, as well as how well we are balancing our mental as well as our emotional lives. So by studying the heart's rhythms as measured by HRV, scientists can detect patterns that deepen our understanding of how humans process emotions and the effects of feelings and emotions on our well-being. In this way, continued HRV research offers us a unique window into communication between the heart and the brain and our emotions. So many studies show that having a moderate level of variability makes us better able to adapt to life's changes. But a low level of heart rate variability is a strong and independent predictor of future health problems, including all causes of mortality. So a low HRV is also associated with numerous medical conditions. So when we are young, we have greater variability, but as we age, our variability decreases. So HRV patterns are so consistent that when scientists look at an HRV reading, they can generally estimate the subject's age within approximately 2 years. So for many years, a steady heart rhythm was considered a sign of a good health. But now we know that our heart rhythm changes with each and every heartbeat, even when we are sleeping. So over the years, HMI researchers have discovered information encoded with these beat-to-beat intervals by looking at the spaces in between the heartbeats in HRV readings rather than the spikes related to the beats themselves. This is somewhat familiar to Morse code, where we understand communications by the intervals between transmissions. In the case of our heart, the intervals between its beats are complex transmissions used to relay communications between the brain and the body. So during the 1990s, researchers at HMI discovered that when people focused on their hearts and evoked elevated emotions such as appreciation and joy, gratitude and compassion, those feelings could be observed as coherent patterns in the heart's rhythms. So the opposite was true of stressful feelings, which cause the heart's rhythms to be incoherent and to appear jagged or irregular. This discovery linked emotional states to heart rate variability patterns. So see figure 7.1 in your books. The researchers also observed that heart rate, beats per minute, and heart rhythm were two separate biological responses. So for instance, a person could have a high heart rate and still maintain a state of coherence. Therefore, it was determined that the heart's rhythms can create coherent internal body states. So in some of our advanced workshops, when students break the energetic bonds with everyone and everything in their past, present reality, they draw from the actual ambient field to build their own individual electromagnetic field. So when this occurs, the energy of the room can drop. Both figures demonstrate this phenomenon during 2 advanced workshops in Australia in 2015 and 2016. So the red line is the baseline measurement on Wednesday and the day before the event starts, when no one is in the room. The blue line is Thursday, the first full day. You can see that the energy in the room decreased slightly. The green line is Friday and the second day. So you can see how the energy of the room continues to rise as students break through on Friday. So at this point, instead of drawing energy from the field, they are contributing energy to the field. So in the first image, both circles represent a top view of a person wearing an EEG brain cap, and the head is facing forward. So the nose is pointing toward the top of the page, and the ears are on both sides. So the tiny white circles represent different brain compartments, where we can measure brain waves in those specific areas. So on the left, You can see how the arrows are all lined up in perfect order, showing the waves in phase, and that is coherence. On the right, you can see the waves of the brain are not in phase, and the arrows do not line up with the peaks and the valleys. That's incoherence. So since I will be showing you different brain scans in the pages ahead, I would like to familiarize you with how we measure coherence and incoherence. So look at the second set of drawings and images. If there is a lot of blue in the brain, it means that there is no coherence. It's actually hypocoherence. And different areas of the brain communicate less with each other. If there is a lot of red in the brain, it means that there is high coherence, hypercoherence, and different areas communicate more with each other. If there is no blue and no red, it means normal or average coherence. So let's look at each of the thin vertical blue lines on the strip charts, graphics 3A, 3B, and 3C, and follow them down to the very bottom. You'll see how they represent 1 second intervals. Each of the 19 horizontal wavy lines is related to different compartments of the brain being measured: the front, both sides, top, and the back of the brain. So if you count the number of cycles from the top of one wave to the top of the next wave, between the two blue vertical lines, you will know the brain waves in each individual area of the brain. So that's how we determine beta, alpha, theta, or delta, or gamma brain waves. If you need to review the different frequency of brain waves, just review figure 2.7. So when you go from a narrow focus to an open focus, and then you take your attention off matter, something, and place your attention on space or energy, nothing, your brain waves change from beta to alpha or to theta. Graphic 3A. So graphic 3A shows a normal thinking busy brain in beta waves. Graphic 3B shows a person who is in coherent global alpha brain waves. So now notice how beautifully synchronized each part of the brain is when this person opens their focus. The blue arrow pointing to the peaks shows how the entire brain waves. Graphic 3C. So let's back up here. The blue arrow pointing to the peaks show how the entire brain is coherent in 12 cycles per second alpha brain waves. So graphic 3C demonstrates a person in coherent theta brain waves. So once again, the blue arrow pointing to the top of the peaks demonstrate that the entire brain is synchronized in about 7 cycles per second, which is the theta range for brain waves. So the images on the left show GDV measurements of students' energy centers before they started an advanced event. The images on the right side show the changes just a few days later after the blessing of the energy center meditation. So notice the difference in the size and the alignment of each center. So the images on the left demonstrate some GDV measurements of subject energy before they started an advanced workshop. The images on the right show the changes in their vital energy a few days after the workshop. Graphic 6A1, 6A2, and 6A3 show a student transitioning to gamma brainwaves as a result of the breath as he passes through high beta. His brain is very aroused with energy. You can see an obvious change in frequency in the brain when this occurs, shown by the blue arrows. The amount of energy in his brain is 160 deviations, standard deviations outside of normal. I'm going to pause right here because if you remember in earlier chapters, he discussed how the normal standard deviations above normal usually is 1, 2, 3 standard deviations above normal. And now we're talking about 160 measurable standard deviations above normal. Absolutely unprecedented, supernatural. So now look at graphic 6A4, where there is a lot of red in the brain. It means that there is a lot of energy. When there is blue in the brain, it means there is very little energy. Therefore, the red arrow that points to the totally red circle means there is an enormous amount of energy in high beta brainwave states as it transitions into gamma. So the software used here does not record gamma brainwaves per se. But from viewing the other measurements in the charts above, we know that the amount of energy in the brain in the totally red circle reflects gamma as well as beta, high beta. So the blue arrows pointing to the row labeled coherence show there is an intense communication along with high energy in all measured brain frequencies. So you can see similar transitions in these graphics, but the blue arrow at the bottom of the strip chart in graphic 6b2 shows the moment the brain is moving from high beta to gamma. And graphic 6b3 shows how the energy in the brain is 260 standard deviations above normal. To put this in context, 99.7% of the population falls within 3 standard deviations above or below normal. So anything outside of 3 standard deviations is supernatural. So the red area of the brain where the blue arrows are pointing in 6b4 is the region that surrounds the pineal gland, as well as a region called broad pattern in those areas of the brain repeatedly when students produce gamma brainwaves. So take a look at graphic 6b5. It's a 3-dimensional picture of the same student's brain from below, showing a significant amount of energy coming from inside the limbic brain. So graphic 7A1 through 7A5 show Felicia's brain transitioning from normal to beta to high beta before she moves into a high energy gamma state. The blue arrow shows the transition. The energy in gamma is 190 standard deviations above normal as she connects to that unified field, the area of the pineal gland, as well as the part of the brain that processes strong emotion, is highly activated, as seen in 7B. So the image in 7C is the underside of the brain. The red region demonstrates that energy is gamma. So the energy in gamma is coming from inside the limbic brain. So take a look at graphic 7D to see the changes in Felicia's skin. So let's take a step back here. So graphic 7D, take a look at graphic 7D to see the changes in Felicia's skin condition the following day after she received a biological upgrade from the unified field. So the first scan represents the measurement of a person's brain before she activates her heart center. The brain is in the dominant frequency of desynchronized beta brainwaves, indicating a busy and distracted brain. The second scan measures the same brain about 10 seconds later as she moves into heart coherence. The entire brain goes into a coherent alpha brainwave state. Graphic 9A1 shows a brain scan of a student who is in coherent alpha brainwaves while watching the kaleidoscope. And graphic 9A2 illustrates a person who is in coherent theta brainwave states viewing the kaleidoscope in trance. Graphic 9A3 shows a 3-dimensional image of a brain, nearly all in red, of another student, indicating almost the whole brain is in a theta state. The red oval on the right shows the brain is being measured in theta. So graphic 9A4 shows the brain scan of a student at different brainwaves frequencies watching the kaleidoscope. The red and orange areas marked with the blue arrows on the right of each brain show a strong amount of activity in delta, theta, alpha, and beta brainwaves. So this is a brain that is fully engaged in a mind movie experience. There is a significant amount of coherent high beta and gamma brain waves activating the entire. So when this person dimensionalized a scene in her mind movie during a meditation, she reported that she had a full-on sensory experience without her physical senses. So in graphic 11A, you can see her brain is in coherent high beta and gamma. The energy in her brain is about 200 standard deviation points above normal. The red arrow, graphic 11B, shows that there's quite a bit of energy in high beta as she moves into gamma state. The blue arrow indicates that there is a lot of coherence in the brain as well. So it's important to note that she cannot make her brain do this. The experience is happening to her. So graphic 12A shows a baseline measurement of a person with normal beta and alpha brain waves before his walking meditation. So if you review his post-scan in graphic 12B, an hour and 20 minutes later, you'll see he changed his brain to a high energy gamma state. So fractal patterns in the form of complex geometric configurations are standing waves of frequency and information that can be descrambled by the brain into very powerful imagery. Although these images are two-dimensional, they give you an idea of how the patterns can appear. So for the years of 1749 through 1926, Alexander Chizevsky compared the annual number of important political and social events which increased solar activity. So I'm going to read that again so you catch that, because I think this is an important point. So from the years of 1749 to 1926, Alexander Chizevsky compared the annual number of important, it's like the number of important political and social events with increased solar activity. That is mind-boggling. Think about it. That was 1749. We are in 2020. And that happened in 250 years ago. That's incredible that they would have created that correlation with the limitation of technology that they had then compared to what we have now. Isn't that mind-boggling? Okay, so on the graph, the blue line illustrates sun flares and the red lines relate to human excitability. So notice that every time there's a high solar activity, there is a correlation with the heightened human events that are taking place on Earth. So this is created from data provided in the translation of Alexander Chizevsky's graphics 15A and 15B demonstrate an increase in the collective energy of the room over 3 days in our advanced workshops. And the first line in red is it's the baseline measurement and shows the room's energy before the start of the event and on Wednesday. So as you look at the blue, you're going to look at the red, blue, green, and brown lines, each color representing a different day. You'll see that each day the energy steadily increases. So in graphics 15C and 15D, the same color scale applies. However, these measurements reflect specific time intervals during each day's morning meditations. So check out graphics 15D. It has an extra green line because we measured the energy of the room during the 4 a.m. pineal gland meditation. And as you can see, the energy was very, very high that morning. So compliments of the HeartMath Institute, the top HRV graph represents incoherent heart rhythms as a result of feeling emotions like resentment, impatience, frustration. And the bottom of the HRV graph represents coherent heart rhythms as a result of feeling emotions like gratitude, appreciation, and kindness. So when our HRV is in a heart coherent pattern, it reflects the increased synchronization and harmony within the two branches of the ANS, as well as in the activity occurring in our higher level brain centers. So much of what we've learned from Western medicine has caused us to believe that we cannot control our body's autonomic nervous system, like heart rate and blood pressure, because such functions are beyond the domain of the conscious mind, not to mention the separation between the voluntary and involuntary. So again, I'm going to read that again because I think that's very important. Because such functions are beyond the domain of the conscious mind, not to mention the separation between the voluntary and involuntary nervous systems. So we now know, however, that you don't have to be a yogi or a mystic to be able to master such skills. You just have to be supernatural, which can be learned, obviously. This is one of the reasons why HMI teaches the importance of heart coherence, but also, to the military, law enforcement, schools, athletes, and other high-functioning individuals. So people can maintain clarity, decision-making ability, and the composure in high-stress situations. Next section is benefits of heart coherence. And I would argue that there are very many. So when we choose to cultivate and experience elevated emotions and coherent signal of those elevated emotions, and the coherent signal of those elevated emotions reaches the brain, if the amplitude of the signal is high enough, chemicals equal to those feelings and emotions are released in the body. So we call this a feeling. And positive feelings like this make us feel lighter and freer. So in other words, the energy of our whole state of being is elevated. If you are feeling an elevated sense of well-being in a safe environment and energy of those feelings sets in motion a cascade of at least 1,400 biochemical changes in the body. And that promotes growth and repair. So instead of drawing from the invisible energy or the invisible field of energy around the body to transform energy into chemistry, now you're adding to and expanding the field of energy, the electromagnetic frequency, resulting in a new expression of chemistry reflective of the change in the energy. So how? If the first three energy centers of the body are expander. So again, when we are out of balance, the heart is an energy expander. And when you rest your attention in your heart to create and to sustain elevated emotions, that coherent energy causes your heart to beat like a drum. It's that coherent rhythmic beating that creates a measurable magnetic field around your heart and thus your body. So just like the focused beat of a drum that produces a measurable sound wave, the stronger the coherent rhythm of the heart, the more expanded your field becomes. So when you are feeling hurt, anger, stress, jealousy, rage, competition, or frustration, on the other hand, the signal from the heart to the brain becomes incoherent. And this triggers the release of approximately 1,200 chemicals into the body. This chemical dump lasts approximately 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So in short term, these stressful feelings are not harmful. In fact, they're resolved. In fact, if they're resolved, they improve your resilience. However, the long-term effects of unresolved survival emotions put the entire body, in a point of survival. So the long-term effects of unresolved survival emotions put the entire body into a state of incoherence, making you vulnerable to stress-related health challenges. And these survival emotions draw from the field around your body, causing you to feel separate and materialistic because you're putting most of your focus and your attention on matter, your body, the environment, time, and of course, the source of all your problems. among HMI's most significant findings is that we feel on a minute to minute, second to second, and basis influences the heart. Let me read that again. So among HMI's most significant findings is that we feel on a minute to minute, second to second basis influences the heart, and that our feelings and emotions are a key aspect of unlocking heart intelligence. So because feelings and emotions are energies that emit powerful electromagnetic fields, the stronger the elevated emotions and feelings, the stronger the magnetic field. So in fact, the heart produces the strongest magnetic field in the body, 5,000 times greater in strength than the field that's produced by the brain. So place your finger on your wrist and feel your pulse. Feel that? That pulse is a wave of energy called blood pressure wave. And it travels through your entire body, influencing everything, including brain function. So not only does the heart's magnetic pulse reverberate through every cell of the body, but it also produces a field around your body that can be measured up to 8 to 10 feet away using a sensitive detector called a magnetometer. So when you activate the heart by calling up elevated emotions, you are not only broadcasting that energy to every cell in your body, you are also radiating those feelings out into space all around you. So this is where the heart moves beyond your biology, matter to matter, and into physics, the quantum 5D. So using electroencephalograms, scientists at the HeartMath Institute laboratory discovered that when the heart goes into coherence, the brain waves entrain with the heart's rhythms. And it does so at a frequency of 0.10 hertz. And also that synchronization between the heart and the brain is increased when the subject is in a heart coherent state. The coherent frequency of 0.10 hertz has been shown to be optimum. It's a state that's optimum performance associated with increased access to our deeper intuition and internal guidance. So once the analytical mind is out of the way, the individual now can move down the ladder of consciousness from alpha to theta to delta brainwaves, and the state in which restorative functions in the body can actually take place. So coincidentally, we often see our students reporting profound or mystical experiences in the delta, deep delta around 0.09 to 0.10. 0.09 hertz is just a hundredth of a cycle per second off, reported by optimum coherence, while their hearts are in a very coherent state. However, the amplitude of the energy produced by the heart increases the level of energy in some brains, and in some cases, more than 50 to 300 times the normal level or more. So supporting evidence of this heart-brain coherence was further demonstrated by a series of experiments performed by Gary Schwartz and his colleagues at the University of Arizona. In their experiments, they found inexplicable communications between the heart and the brain that made no sense. So this inexplicable communications between the heart and the brain that made no sense via neurological or other established communication pathways. So this discovery established the fact that energetic interactions between the heart and the brain exist through electromagnetic fields, what we talked about earlier about the toroidal field or the torus. Both examples point to the fact that when we focus our attention on our heart and our emotions, the heart's beating acts as an amplifier, and this increases the synchronization between our heart and our brain. And it creates coherence not only in the physical organs of the body, but also in the electromagnetic field surrounding the body. So also noteworthy is that right behind the breastbone sits a small little gland called the thymus. We talked about that in one of the previous chapters. We talked about how it's good for you to tap, tap, tap every morning, tapping that thymus gland. It releases thyroxine. So the thymus, which has an intimate connection to the heart, and especially the heart center. So as one of the main organs of the immune system, the thymus serves as a vital role in the promotion of T cells, which defend the body from pathogens such as bacteria and viruses. So the thymus gland functions optimally up to the onset of puberty, but it begins to shrink as we get older because of natural decreases in the production of human growth hormone. So as with many vital organs, the thymus is also prone to the negative effects of long-term stress. So when we're living in emergency mode for extended periods of time and diminish our vital energy field, all of our energy is directed outward to protect us from external threats, leaving very little energy to promote us or protect us from the internal threats. So eventually this leads to a dysfunction of the immune system. And it makes sense then that as the heart center becomes activated with energy by mobilizing the parasympathetic nervous system, the system for growth and repair, the thymus gland should become more active as well, because now we're adding energy into that gland. So therefore, the thymus gland should also benefit from the practice of sustaining coherence within the body. So aiding in the support of the overall vitality of our immune system and long-term health. So you learned earlier in this book that in my own independent studies, when our students were able to feel and to sustain gratitude and other elevated emotions for a total of 15 to 20 minutes per day for 4 days, the energy of those emotions signaled the immune cells to make a protein called IgA, immunoglobulin A. The significant increase in IgA is a perfect example of one of the many positive cascading effects of heart coherence. What all of this boils down to is that the quality of our heart's rhythm has consequences for our overall health. So if heart beats in harmonious rhythms, So if the heart beats in harmonious rhythms, its efficiency reduces the stress on other systems of the body, maximizing our energy and create states whereby we thrive mentally, emotionally, and physically. If there is disharmony in our heart rhythms, the opposite is true. This incoherence leaves us with less energy available for healing and for maintaining, building projects, creating unrest within our internal states, and putting increased stress on our heart and other organs. Heart attacks and heart disease, for example, occur when the body has been under stress for an extended period of time and when we intentionally choose elevated emotions. However, focusing less on disharmony and more on gratitude, and our bodies respond positively and we enjoy improved health. So the next time you see an elevated emotion, to tune into your future and embrace those feelings before the event unfolds and feel gratitude that the event has already occurred. Just know that the worst thing that can probably happen, you're on your way to heal. So what's going to happen to you is that you're going to begin to heal. Okay. So the effects of chronic stress. So when we live in a constant state of stress, our heart center becomes incoherent, and this stifles our ability to create. So in response to the chaotic heart rhythms, the brain becomes very disintegrated and incoherent, and that incoherence is reflected in the two branches of the ANS. So if the parasympathetic system is the brake and the sympathetic system is the accelerator, then when they are working in opposition, so can you imagine putting on your accelerator, flooring it, and then jamming the brakes on at the same time? You know, it's like your car's struggling between wanting to speed away and stopping. And so when you have that disorder in your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, that's exactly what's happening to you. You have an energetic struggle within inside you because you're accelerating and stopping simultaneously. Something's got to give. So it doesn't take a significant amount of automotive knowledge to understand the ramifications of these opposing forces. We wear out the brakes and put stress on the drivetrain while the resistance wastes energy. That's valuable energy and reduces fuel efficiency. Eventually, this habituation of stress wears down the body so much that it eliminates our ability to repair and maintain health. So depleting our vitality and our resiliency. So if resilience is based on efficient energy and management, you may feel completely drained, out of sorts, and perhaps sick while under the influence of chronic stress. So the more addicted we become to these states of stress, the less likely we are to open our hearts and go within and consciously create heart coherence. So my experience, or actually an experience I had at my home in a rural area of Washington State, serves as a good example. On one November evening, I came home from work, parked my car as I always did, and I began walking down a 40-yard pathway to my house, and it was pitch black, about 30 yards from my front door. Off to my right, I heard an ominous growl coming from behind some very large rocks. So immediately, I narrowed my focus on matter, something, and found myself thinking, what could be lurking in the darkness? I began searching in my mind and then my environment for knowns from my past memory bank, in order to predict my future. So could it be one of my dogs? I wondered. I started calling out their names, but there was no response. As I took a few more steps, the growling became louder. Without my having to think about mobilizing the energy of my body, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. My heart rate and respiratory rate increased, of course, and my senses became heightened in preparation to fight or flight. So I took out my cell phone and I turned on the flashlight to narrow my focus on the possible predator and the possible threat, but I couldn't see what was making the noise. From the darkness, the growling continued. I slowly backed up and finally fled to the barn, where my ranch hands were putting away the horses for the night. So we grabbed our flashlights, we grabbed our guns, and returned to the scene just in time to see a cougar and her cub scurrying away through the bushes. So you can probably gather from this story that a highly stressful situation like this is not the time to open your heart or trust in the unknown. It's not a time to take your attention off of things in your outer environment or your material world, or to focus on a new possibility in your mind. It's a time to run, hide, or fight. I should go fight like this, huh? Okay, but if you are perpetually hooked into the fight or flight state, even if there is no cougar in the bushes, you will be less likely to want to close your eyes and go within because you have to keep your attention on the perceived threat that is outside of you. So no new information can enter your nervous system that is not equal to or relevant to the emotions you are experiencing. So you can't program your body for a new destiny. So it makes perfect sense that the more you live addicted to the stress hormones in your normal life, the less likely you are to want to create, to meditate, to open your heart and be vulnerable. Okay, the next section is the heart brain. So in 1991, the pioneering work of J. Andrew Armour, MD, PhD, showed that the heart literally has its own mind of its own. So with as many as 40,000 neurons, the heart has a nervous system that functions independently of the brain. So this technical term coined for this system is the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. So more commonly known as the heart brain. So this discovery was so monumental that it led to a new field of science called neurocardiology. So when the heart moves into coherence, it acts as an amplifier. I'm going to repeat that again because this is so powerful. When your heart moves into coherence, it acts as an amplifier. So when you choose to go into a heart coherent state and you choose to bring an elevated emotion, it is amplifying that emotion of love, of joy, of gratitude, of appreciation, of holding in higher esteem. It broadcasts it out in your electromagnetic field, and there are waves that are created that ripple beyond your electromagnetic field. That's what this is saying. It's sending coherent information through its afferent nervous pathways straight into the thalamus, which synchronizes the neocortex of the brain's survival centers. A lot going on here just by doing this simple practice. So the heart and the brain are connected by efferent, which is descending, and afferent, ascending pathways. However, 90% of the connecting nerve fibers ascend from the heart up to the brain. And Armour uncovered that these direct afferent neural pathways continuously send signals and information that interacts with and modifies the activity in the brain's higher cognitive emotional centers. These signals from the heart to the brain connect through the vagus nerve and continue straight to the thalamus, which synchronizes cortical activity, such as thinking, perceiving, and understanding language. Then to the frontal lobes responsible for motor functions and the problem solving, and onto the brain's survival center, the amygdala, which is in the middle of your brain as well, which signals emotional memory. So the core cells of the amygdala even synchronize to the heart's beating. So take a look at figure 7.2. This means that if your heart center is open, it's keeping your brain survival centers in check. It's possible then that the more heart-centered you are, the less likely you will react to stressors in your life. The reverse is also true. The less energy you have in your heart center, the more likely you will be living in the survival mode. So this tells us that our feelings and heart rhythms affect what emotional memories and responses transpire in us. So stress and anxiety can trigger brainwave patterns to match an anxiety habit of the past. So conversely, just like a computer that matches patterns, elevated emotions of the heart can produce coherence in brainwave patterns. So if you're summoning the feelings of your future by creating elevated states, your brain is beginning to lay the neural networks for those future emotions or that new destiny. Arma's discovery of the afferent neural pathways from the heart to the brain proves that the heart independently processes emotions and it responds directly to the environment and regulates its rhythms without receiving information from the brain. Pause. This makes total sense. Now, if you recall, I shared with you guys earlier in chapter either 2 or 3, I talked about my experience where I was in the monastery and how I was telling my brain that I was going to be, as I was doing the challenge course in the monastery, that 50-foot high up, that yellow I-beam, I told myself that I was going to slow my heart rate down. I was going to slow down my breath. I was slowing my brain waves. And as I was beginning this, independent of, my perception wasn't that I was nervous. I didn't feel any fear mentally speaking, but my body, which is a record of the past thoughts, feelings, and emotions, it's just saying here, it responds directly to the environment and regulates its rhythms without receiving information from the brain. That's why my brain, I didn't think that I was nervous. So my body was betraying me and it was taking past feelings and emotions of frightenedness, of nervousness, and my legs then started to shake uncontrollably. I couldn't control, or I didn't think I could control the shaking of my legs, and then I had to command my brain to stop. I said, nope, brain, you tell my legs to stop. I'm the master, you're the brain, you do as I say. Legs, stop shaking. I can't be wasting any energy on shaking legs. I need all of the energy to have laser-like focus so that I could accomplish the goal of walking with balance and getting to the other side of the I-beam onto the next platform. So that explains why I didn't perceive, I wasn't thinking that I was afraid, but my body, it's like with a threatening situation, it's like, we're going to start shaking here. Makes perfect sense now. Even though this is my 3rd time reading the book, I don't remember reading this in particular. Isn't that funny? My 3rd time reading the book. All right. So that's because the heart and the autonomic nervous system, they always work together in tandem. So also noteworthy is that the nerves facilitating this communication enable the heart to sense, remember, self-regulate, and make decisions about cardiac control independent of the nervous system. So to put it simply, emotions and feelings originating in the heart play an important role in the way we think, process information, feel, and understand the world and our place in it. Okay, pause here. Brief little discussion on this. To put it simply, emotions and feelings originating in the heart play an important role in the way we think, how we process information, how we digest it mentally, how we feel, and how we're going to understand the world at large. Think about that, especially when it comes to dealing with personal relationships. And first of all, the most important personal relationship you can have is the relationship that you have with yourself. If you're not being heart-centered, think about it, your heart is independent from the processing of your brain. Think about how you can really have a disconnect, so much so that you create a self-sabotage. I think this is a perfect place for us to pause for part 2. Make sure to join us for part 3 of chapter 7 of Becoming Supernatural. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Dame Lillian Walker, your host. Ciao for now.